Hey YouTube. So I wanted to make a video today about the question, I suppose, of whether I'm making a deck. And the answer would be yes, but very, very slowly. I wanted to talk a little bit about my idea for a deck and how artistic imposter syndrome feeds into it, and sort of what I'm planning to do, and also the challenges of wanting to create a deck in this kind of Kickstarter-y environment, but not wanting to do some of the logistical stuff. So to start, the idea for the deck I've had for about a year, and it came from the fact that as far as I've seen, I want to be careful not to say that there aren't any, because maybe I just don't know of them, but like I haven't really seen many, if any, explicitly queer themed oracle decks. I've seen more and more of that in tarot, but not so much in oracle. And at the same time, I was seeing a lot of feminine energy decks. But as somebody who identifies as a queer femme, but also as non-binary and not as a woman or as feminine, which is different from femme, femme is like an explicitly queer, resistance-based term that is kind of defined in opposition. And so it's a specific thing. And I hadn't seen decks that reflected that energy. Maybe I've seen some that like reflected a little, but nothing that's like explicitly grounded in that. And I wanted to have a deck where I could work with my gender energy that feels comfortable to me in the way that others can work with like a divine feminine or divine masculine themed deck. So I had this idea. The name is the Femme Power Oracle, and I was like, okay, maybe I can partner with an artist. I talked to a friend about it. She was interested, but like a little bit flaky, which is totally understandable. You know, people are busy. And this has always been the challenge I've had. Like, I've also, for example, really wanted to get into comics, but my art style, it's not that I have no artistic abilities. I can sketch pretty realistic portraits, but what I can't do is actually intentionally non-realistic. So in other words, I can't figure out the like comic style or like the illustrative style, as well as I can try to copy more realistically, and that's not the style I like. It's not what I want if I'm doing comics or if I'm doing a tarot deck or an oracle deck. So for a while I thought I would, learn, because I so wanted to be able to put comics out there. And I decided, I mostly gave up on the comics idea because it was just so vast and daunting. And I didn't really want to partner with somebody where it's like, typically in a comics relationship, the writer would pay the artist, which is fine and great, and artists should get paid. It's just like, it's not, because it wasn't something I was doing for money, the idea of like paying somebody so that I could make something come to life and not having control over what the art looks like was kind of like, eh. And I felt similarly about a tarot deck. I mean, I think if I could find somebody to partner with who had a really similar vision, that would be great, but it would take some effort to find that person. And because the artist would need to make money, I would need to have a very clear plan and a timeline to actually sell the deck. So I was like, okay, the vision for what I have. So I've written a lot of the guidebook and I have all the card names. And the vision is like fairly bold, fairly simple images that are at the same time recognizably diverse, where there are human figures and at least to some extent confronting. And I thought I might be able to actually do that. So I borrowed my roommate's Cintiq tablet and just tried to see like if I drew on a tablet, would this be easier than trying to do it on paper? I did maybe 4 cards, and I found it to kind of be in the middle. There was one I really liked, the Resist card. I really liked. I posted the 4 in the tarot community for the course I was taking at the time, and people were very encouraging and supportive. But I still kind of like, I never really got around to borrowing the tablet again. Wasn't like feeling super jazzed about it. And I had this thought, so a couple of decks that I've recently received that I can use as examples. So one you've probably seen a lot of, and that is the Light Seers Tarot. Everybody's talking about it. So here are some image examples. So this art style is probably the closest in a tarot deck to the kind of art style I wish I were capable of. Not necessarily for my specific project, but just in general. Like, I wish I had this kind of artistic skill. I do not. And so that's obviously not realistic for me. And what I had been planning to do was a black deck with white, really like silhouette-y images. So like the white wouldn't have any black on top of it. It would just be white on black. The colors don't overlap. And I like the idea of that aesthetic. I've been kind of recently thinking maybe like a splash of pink or something, but I kind of like the idea of having a femme themed deck that is black and white, because it like further emphasizes that femme is not necessarily girly. Although I'm femme, I love pink, but you know, not everybody does. And then I got this idea when I was looking at the botanical deck I just bought, who is an amazing deck creator, and like everybody's obsessed, including me myself, with trying to get the Idiosyncradeck. But if you look at this art, so I don't know exactly how Jess did it, so I'm making an assumption here. This may very well be some of it freeform or hand sketched, but it looks like it could be at least vector art. Like it's graphic. It kind of has that feeling of like you could have done it in Illustrator. And while I do not actually have any existing skills in Illustrator, or Pixelmator is what I actually use, I don't really have vector graphics skills, I started thinking about vector graphics as an alternative to trying to freehand it, because I don't know that I will ever be happy with my freehanding, and I would love to be, and I know if you practice for years, you get to the point where you're happier, but like, oh, that's a lot of time, right? And I have other hobbies. So, but vector art, like I'm a tech person, comfortable with computers. I've used Pixelmator for a lot of different things. I did like an MCU tarot deck, some of you may have seen, which it cannot, just to be clear, cannot be printed. I have never printed it, cannot be sold. I know it's super illegal. It's just fan art that I posted, like what it would look like. So don't sue me, Marvel. But, you know, I've done projects like that. So I'm like comfortable with computer graphics programs, and it takes away the feelings of like, oh, my hand is going to be shaky and this and that. So my new goal is to try and see if I can create some images for the keywords that I have that I'm happy with using vector graphics. And I bought a course cheap on doing it with Pixelmator. I've seen some like Illustrator courses that will probably translate pretty well. And so I'm looking into like resources. If you know any good ones, leave them in the comments, especially about like not the tools, but like not the tools of vector drawing, but like how do you like take an idea of an image and like make it into shapes? That's a skill I need to learn, but I feel more like I can work with that. And so I'm taking a little mini sabbatical at the end of the year. I mentioned before, December and a little bit of November and a little bit of January, and so for about 5 weeks. And so I'm committed to at least try. And the nice thing too is I can use my own computer, so I use my own tools. I don't have to borrow. And I'm going to attempt to start illustrating these cards and see if it's something that I can live with, because so much of what makes me go about my own art is actually the shakiness of the lines and the like sketchiness of it, and like the feeling that it looks like a kid because I can't do a straight line or can't do a curve. So with tools, I can do that, and my hope is that I will not have that knee-jerk reaction, and then I'll have a deck. Now, part 2 is, so that's like the concept, the art challenges. Part 2, of course, oh, and by the way, before I get to part 2, I will say that there are a lot of decks. I love like like Mary Elizabeth Evans, like Vessel or Apparition or Spirit Speak. There's a lot of sketchy stuff I love. I just don't like my own. But yeah, so part 2 is the business side. And this is the part that probably means this deck will never see the light of day in the way that other decks do. I know, and I feel like a lot of deck creator, like if you're watching this and you're a deck creator, you might be like, oh my god, you lazy asshole. Like, we all have to work and slave through this, and you should too. And I understand that. I understand that, like, it's a huge amount of effort. I'm so grateful to the people that I bought decks from. I understand that a lot of you are putting in above and beyond what you're actually receiving for your labor in monetary compensation. So I want to acknowledge that. But I have to be honest about my own health, my own ability, my own energy, and I just don't think that a Kickstarter is realistic for me. The promotion and marketing piece is one, although I think I could do that because the tarot community is so awesome, and like I have a decent social media following, but the actual physical shipping part is just horrific to me. The idea of having to social anxiety, but having to look my apartment concierge in the face and apologize for all the boxes that are coming in, or going to the hassle of like setting up a PO box situation. The idea of having to, go to Kinko's, print labels, send them off, do international shipping, all of that stuff. I can't see it. I can't see myself doing it. Which is a shame, because the nice thing about doing a Kickstarter, of course, and the nice thing about like working with a company where you're ordering a ton of decks, is that you can get nice decks. So I can think of 2 possibilities that I might pursue. One would be to use something like Make Playing Cards, so one of these sites where they'll print for you and you don't have to do anything. The downside of that is as far as I know, there aren't a lot of options with those. So I think they have to be playing card size. I could be wrong on that. But I don't think you can do things like edges. Like, I would love to have black matte edges. I don't think that's possible. Well, I'll edge my own deck with a marker. And yeah, so that's just mostly just a quality thing. Is like, I know the cards aren't going to be great, and it's better than nothing. But the other option I've considered is doing an Etsy thing and only ordering a very limited number of decks. So basically, like, finding a printer, acknowledging that it's going to be a little more expensive if it's a small run, but like finding a printer, ordering like 50, maybe 100 copies, having them sent to me, and then at least with Etsy, it's not like all at once. So I don't have to like take time off my job that I would rather be spending having an actual vacation. I could send as the orders come in, and I could theoretically, if people are willing to pay, and this is a like trade-off, but if I could find a rate that was reasonable, because I don't need to make money on it. Like, this is not something I would need to make money on. I might charge a little over cost, just to like acknowledge that I would be spending some time on it, but like, I am financially privileged enough that that's not a big concern for me. So if I could find a wholesale or find a printer price where I could at least get like decent card stock, I could get matte print, and I could get black matte edges, which is what I would really want, then I might do that, open an Etsy shop and sell that way. But again, now suddenly you're a small business. Even if you're not actually making money on it, I would have to do taxes, self-employment taxes, which I've literally turned down speaking gigs just so that I don't have to do self-employment taxes again, because I hate them. They drive me crazy. And I know, again, people are probably like, oh my god, you're ridiculous, but that's where I am. So I'm just sharing, this is like a rambly video, I realize, but I'm just sharing kind of where I am. I would love like to hear from folks who have like considered a deck, who have done a deck, who have not done a deck, why you didn't do it. People who have experience with Kickstarter. I've watched some videos on the topic, but if you have any thoughts, I'd love to hear them. If you have any advice on vector art or any thoughts about that, I'd love to hear it as well. And if you're also like, in the early stages of making a deck, like, let me know, we can cheer each other on. But that's where that is. So there you go. There's my rant. If you enjoy tarot content, usually it's not this rambly, feel free to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.